All right, good evening. It's American Gladio, November 7th, 2017, for 4 more minutes. It is election day in the United States of America. I just saw that the mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, was elected with 66% of the vote. So that's good news if you want more homeless in New York City. And there happen to have been a couple gubernatorial races here in, I believe, New Jersey and Virginia. There was a House seat up for grabs in Utah. And as me and Alex, who's joining me, are going to talk about, it was a stinging defeat for the Republican Party. So, Alex, what's your first impression on having seen the results tonight? What do you think was the real takeaway from, especially the one race that everybody was talking about, which you know?
Virginia.
Yeah.
I was just like, wow. I was really shocked. I believed Gillespie would pull off a 1 point win. He had been behind in the polls but barely. Like, he was down by like an average of 3 or 4 points, and he lost by 7. And that's saying a lot because in uh, in Virginia polling history, it's always skewed to the left. In 2014, Gillespie was down by 9 points on average in all the polls, and he lost that race to Mark Warner by like 20,000 votes. In 2013, in the last governor's race, Cuccinelli was down to Terry McAuliffe by about 13 points, and he ended up losing that by 2. So I thought that because Gillespie was doing so well or not well, he was only down by 3 or 4 in the polls. I thought he would squeak out a victory. So I was really shocked.
Sorry, I had my mic off. I was not really shocked because I had no expectations coming in, meaning that I didn't really know which way it would go. Personally, I had no personal commitment to the race except that I obviously hate the Democrats, and it would have been kind of funny to see people crying all over it. I don't, the reactions tonight from Republicans, I think, are indicative of a couple differences and a couple problems in the party. First of all, there's nobody who's whining and throwing tantrums and burning garbage cans, to my knowledge. Okay, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Alex is in Tennessee. It looks to be a very clear evening over there. I don't
Yeah.
see any people, rioting in the streets there.
Mhm.
Fairly red
Right
state.
behind me where I'm sitting, there was a protest right after Trump got elected, but it's quiet now.
So, yeah, I think that's one of the main differences, that when the Republicans lose, um, I think they do take the loss as a loss. Usually, I'm talking about the voters, not the party execs, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
And then the other problem, I think, is that Republicans are too stoic about this, and definitely there's people that I've been reading online. I'll get to Raheem Kassam, who is one of my favorite writers. I'll get to his reaction. Um, what do you think? You've been following this a lot more closely. I think you said you were calling people too. What do you think should have been
Yeah, I made
done?
a few calls today.
What's that?
I made a few calls today.
So, what do you think should have been done to um, not arrive to the situation where they lost?
I think this is a losing battle, really. And basically, the reason I just had my hopes up. That's why my expectations were the way they were. Virginia has become a pretty solidly blue state. It's more like in the likes of Michigan or Wisconsin, where like they'll flip from time to time, but it's mostly going to vote Democrat just because of the rise in the population in the DC suburbs, which is very liberal. And again, a Republican in Virginia will always be an underdog. That's not helped by the fact that Trump is elected and all the liberals are active to do whatever they can to try to stop any kind of Republican agenda. And this did spill over to the governor's race, even though it had little to do with Trump. And I think Gillespie, in the end, what he was trying to do, he refused to take, like, he didn't get Trump to come and campaign for him, and instead he tried to play a little bit more moderate of a card and say like Trump isn't there backing me up, yada yada yada, and trying to make a pitch to the moderate voters in the DC suburbs that will vote either way. And what we saw tonight is he didn't really win any of those voters in the DC suburbs. Like he actually did worse than Trump did in the DC suburbs, which is saying something because Hillary did really well in the DC suburbs compared to Obama. And what ended up happening basically is his pitch not only kept like it didn't work in that sense, but two, because he didn't fully embrace Trump, a lot of like diehard Trump voters didn't go to the polls, and that hurt Ed Gillespie. It was a combination of those two factors, and I think for a Republican to win in Virginia, I didn't like the race baiting ads from either side. Northam's was particularly sick, but Ed Gillespie should have been focusing more on jobs and how his opponent would create them. But Northam from the Democrats was really a pretty strong candidate. He was pretty moderate, but the very leftist candidate who he ran against in the primary, Tom Perillo, he endorsed Northam right after the thing ended. So it helped get a lot of the leftist voters to go vote. But because Northam was moderate, it kept Gillespie from being able to win the moderate voters outside DC.
Well, I think that's a lot of knowledge that, a few things that I didn't know personally too, especially with regards to the early primary races. I didn't know so much about Perillo. My impression had been more that Perillo and Northam were pretty close in terms of their platforms. But
Gillespie forced Northam a lot more to the center, especially after the race. Like Northam had cast the deciding vote to allow sanctuary cities in Virginia, and then he said he would be open to banning them because Gillespie attacked him on that. And he also got Northam to switch and say like, no, we're not going to completely destroy Confederate statues, which became a big deal after Charlottesville.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting to note that Ed Gillespie, he won his primary by about, it says 1.2%.
Yeah, it was very close. And he lost to Corey Stewart, who was a diehard Trumpster. Like, that guy was basically like, I'll do anything Trump tells me and I'll bring Trump's presidency to Virginia. And the Republican base there liked it. If you look at the map of Gillespie and Stewart, all of rural Virginia, where Republicans need to do really well in if they want to win a race, it voted for Stewart. The only places Gillespie really won were in the DC suburbs, so moderate Republicans there put him in. And again, it shows you just how populated the DC suburbs have become.
Yeah, I think that there's a real issue right now I'm actually looking at the map that Alex is talking about, and I'll actually present it. Hold on. You can see it where my cursor is right now. Let me see here.
I mean, that was a close race, and you see basically in the areas where Northam won, which basically Gillespie won Republicans that are in Democratic strongholds, and because of that, like their Republican base wasn't as energized because they didn't have a fiery candidate like Corey Stewart who could win people over. And I thought Gillespie would appeal to moderates and be able to paint Northam as like a very hardcore leftist. But Northam won the battle of image there because he was able to paint himself as pretty moderate.
Okay, so we're getting to a real fault line between me and Alex now. Let me bring some context here. For the past 24 hours, me and Alex and one of Alex's friends have been shitposting each other about a topic. I don't really think it's related to this, though, right? Wasn't it like something about Calvin Coolidge or something?
I tried to make a pitch for Gillespie because I had seen a lot of people in my Facebook feed saying, I'm not voting for Ed Gillespie. He hasn't earned my vote, and I hate Ralph Northam, but I mean, both of these guys suck, so I'm not going to vote. And I was trying to make a pitch and say, look, Gillespie isn't Rand Paul. He's not Calvin Coolidge. He's not that guy that gets everybody fired up. But he is the lesser evil. And if you don't vote for him, we're going to have pretty much a hardcore leftist because Northam is a hardcore leftist. He just painted himself as a moderate. He's not that moderate.
Okay. So being that for some reason, not to get too into specifics, we got into some weird argument where it was about whether Calvin Coolidge was racist or not, something about a Mississippi flood, and I would say, using that conversation as a template, that it shows exactly why people like me and people like Alex don't really get along. Notwithstanding this podcast, right? Um,
We
the,
get along pretty well.
I'm saying like in terms of within parties and things like that.
You're very cynical about politicians. I'm not.
Yeah, that's a very good way to summarize it. For once we agree. Um, the issue here is that you actually said the exact same thing that Bill Maher said about Hillary Clinton to Bernie Sanders supporters. It doesn't matter whether it's the that's true to the degree that happened in that race with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, where she's somebody who's completely sold out the progressive agenda in many cases and threw them under the bus like she's been doing the past few days. The issue is, Alex, and the numbers bear out from tonight that people don't want to vote for a candidate who is some sort of milk toast, condensed, um, you know, orange juice concentrate version of what they want. They want
Right.
somebody who will implement the policies that are consistent with their own personal philosophy. Okay, whatever that may be.
They
If
want
it's
someone who's on fire. They want someone who has that emotional appeal, and Gillespie did not have that.
well, then there's really no, and I understand your position that you wanted this Republican to win. I would have preferred he would win. I actually personally didn't care that much, but both of us would agree we would have preferred he'd have won. Me more for the Schadenfreude towards the liberals, and you because you're personally committed to the Republicans. Um, but I think that this is a lesson, and I've been seeing this pattern, not just in the United States, mind you. I saw in the British election there was this philosophy that we're going to win by inertia. The British Conservatives, they said, well, we're going to win by basically inertia because the Labour Party is so batshit crazy that we're just going to win by
Right.
default. And
But wait, answer me this: what did Labor do with that sentiment?
they did exactly what you're just talking about. They used
Starting to rain, so I'm going to move over here.
All right.
They used what?
Well, they used basically the tactics of popular movements, using mass rallies and things like that, going out into the public square. They did the type of campaign that Trump did. They used the same type of tactics with Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell and people like that over in England that Donald Trump did in the United States. So therefore, they had extreme policies and extreme visions, but they presented it in a way that was, digestible for a population that needed inspiration. And that's not what Ed Gillespie did. That's not what Hillary Clinton did. That's not what the GOP as a whole does. And that's why, and I think you basically admitted it before, they need a figure like Trump, or they need a figure, and I'll admit that as a Rand Paul supporter. Rand Paul couldn't pull off what Trump did.
Rand Paul has the potential to really energize a base, though.
Yeah, but it takes much longer for Rand Paul, who's a long-winded, talks up a storm, 30 minutes talking about the authorization of use of military force, going into specifics. It's not the same type of appeal as a Donald Trump or Jeremy Corbyn, whichever side it is. Right. So we're talking personalities now. We don't even have to argue ideology.
Right.
Where Ed Gillespie, to be and I think you've admitted it, is not a guy who is going to energize anybody, and therefore I think he deserved to lose, and the Republicans deserve the defeat tonight. Your reaction?
It's funny you say that. I was driving around campus to try to find with Wi-Fi. I had the Patriot XM Patriot station on, and someone was saying that Gillespie was just like a Hillary Clinton because he was their Republican establishment, which he was. He was a former lobbyist and like a George Bush councilman or something like that, and basically he was running for governor. It was almost a sense of entitlement. It's like, oh well, I deserve to move up somewhere in the political ranks, so vote for me. That was the Ed Gillespie sense. And because of that, he didn't energize the base. Hillary Clinton had that mantra with the Democrats. It's like, all right, my turn. And that was the biggest thing. It's like, it's her turn. She's a woman. That was the best they had. With Trump, it's like, make America great again. That one is a much more appealing claim. In addition to that, though, I was looking at some of the exit polls from Nate Silver's 538, and it was like, uh, we saw a surge in younger voters, which is exactly what Jeremy Corbyn did, because all the demographics in the British election were the same, but a lot more young people voted. Not the demographics, the demographic results. A lot more young people though in Britain ended up voting, and this time around, the young people in Virginia, 18 to 24-year-olds, made up 14% of the electorate. There's a lot of people, and those are like young social justice warrior anti-Trumpsters that went out and voted for Ralph Northam. So that's what happened. You have to have someone. You have to have someone who makes it hip to be like a conservative, not someone who's like, "Oh, I'm voting for you because you're following the Republican agenda," even though I have no clue what that is.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll use an analogy because I was just arguing with your friend, who I'll call, you know, Ben. I'll just call him Ben. I was arguing with him about analogies and about literature. So, you've seen Braveheart, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a number
I
of
actually
scenes.
have not seen that one. I was thinking of something else.
The one with Mel Gibson and the
Right, I
Scots.
haven't seen that one. I just know like he throws like something in the middle and they all go fight for it at the end.
Well, what a lot of the central scenes involve him trying to get the nobles to get on his side
Mhm.
and fight the English so that they can liberate Scotland.
Right.
And there's one scene where Robert the Bruce, who's the heir to the Scottish crown, comes to him and says, "Well, why do we need to be so confrontational? I mean, I have the title to be the king of Scotland. I don't need the help of this other nobleman, or for that matter, the people." And Mel Gibson's character William Wallace says, "Well, men don't bow to titles," and that's exactly the reason. For example, that's why I don't trust any of these politicians that have, for example, whether they have voting records, whether they have, they have terms as congressmen or governors or whatever,
Mhm.
unless they've actually had to deal with adversity from the media and the public, which
Mhm.
is it's not it's pretty uncommon. There's very few politicians, and either first of all, the Democrats, there's very few politicians that have to deal with real electoral diversity unless it's like from some of these progressive challengers.
Mhm.
So that's why a lot of people, they love Bernie Sanders because he swims against the tide. They love
Mhm.
Donald Trump because he swims against the tide.
Yeah.
And I think that hopefully, and you can disagree or not, or you can try to put your own spin on this. I think you should you should recognize that tonight was proof that this moderation and this appeal to the center is a bunch of bullshit.
I don't
Because
know about that. It depends.
well, just hold on. I'll let you react in a second. Um, the people in the center. If you look at the New York City election, where Bill de Blasio won 66% of the vote. Now, 66% of New Yorkers are not pussy hat wearing, lesbians with, Birkenstocks that are, they're growing like nose hairs in order to make like chia pets or something.
Right.
That's 66% of New Yorkers aren't like that. But there's a
66% of New Yorkers probably didn't even vote, I bet.
well, yeah, but 66% of voters. Okay, so what I'm trying to get at is that you do need a topic that ties people together in order to push your agenda. And what Donald Trump did was he went on immigration, and what Bernie Sanders did was he went on income inequality or the trade deals, things like that. You need something, and you need a vision for people to follow. And therefore, when you take these establishment GOP types, and we can go one by one by name, whether it's Corker or Kasich or anybody you pick.
Yeah.
You have to tell me what is that item that they will push till the end, because for most of them it's something that doesn't even matter. It's something where their vote is already a given.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think is the problem with both parties. But with the Republicans, it's a party that they're more interested in giving symbolic gestures of that throw like a little sardine to the base, and that's it. And that's why they're being devoured alive by people that are further to the right.
I'm gonna try to come back out here where it's better connection, and it stopped raining. So.
Hello.
Hey.
Carlos is here introducing the indefatigable, the courageous Carlos Cordova from
God.
LA.
I hear you're a Bernie Sanders fan.
I am.
Cool. I used to be one of those myself.
Yeah, well, good. I guess. I don't know what to say.
Used to be.
So we're gonna.
After he endorsed, what happened? He endorsed Hillary, and you said fuck him.
Well, kind of.
Well, we'll get to that in a second.
I have to actually go soon.
So Alex, you can react to my last point, and then if you want, you can leave, and Carlos will take over. What do you say about that whole issue of the Republicans needing some central issue to drive their candidates? Otherwise, they'll fall apart.
I think you're both right and wrong in different ways, because having that essential issue really helps. You saw Donald Trump, right? I mean, no one will deny that. And I guarantee you, if Bernie had been the Democratic nominee, same thing would have happened. A bunch of people who went and voted for Jill Stein or Gary Johnson are like, this is dumb, I'm not voting, would have gone and voted. And that would have been a much more interesting election. Probably Bernie would have won it, I think. But at the same time, the whole like Ed Gillespie, we're throwing the sardine to the base thing, it will work in Republican strongholds. It worked in Tennessee. Bob Corker would have easily won re-election here. It worked even with Ohio. John Kasich won an election, although he was pretty popular on the economy. It worked even in Georgia 6. Like, I mean, Karen Handel still won that race. It was by 2 points, but she won. And it works in places where Republicans usually win. It does not work in places like Virginia, where you're already behind and you are like, it's a Democratic leaning swing state. It won't work in places like New York City. It won't work in places like New Jersey. Like, you have if you want to, like, the only way to win especially in a place like Virginia, you got to get your base energized. So that's where it doesn't work, but it can still work in like places like Texas or Tennessee, I think.
Yeah, but that's not the problem. I mean, tonight the Republicans won another. They kept a seat in Utah.
Yeah, I guarantee you that was an establishment race. It wasn't like Trump or anything.
No, absolutely. But I mean, by the same token, I mean, Carlos lives in California. There's a number of very sketchy guys in California that are on the surface very progressive, but they go and they vote for. I mean, who's that woman? Kamala Harris, with her vote and her issues with the banking industry and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us would argue that there's safe seats where, even they used to call them yellow dog Democrats in the South, where people would vote for a yellow dog as long as it was registered as a Democrat.
Yeah.
That's not the issue. The issue here is how do you get people to actually feel like they're connected to the candidate?
And that is where most politicians have failed most.
All right, Carlos. What's your I mean, did you watch anything about the results? And I know you just got back home from work or something, but what's your impression
Yeah.
of this defeat today
Ye-
in Virginia? Possibly, nobody cares about New Jersey, but you know,
ye-
uh,
ye-
yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. Scrolling through Facebook, I saw some progressive fanfare happening today about Virginia, and Alabama is coming up soon. Not today, but I think next week Alabama has an election. But a couple of things happened today. I think Missouri was it the other one that I saw. I haven't read much on it, but again, I don't know. Coming to your point that you asked Alex earlier, is look back to what happened on 2009 and 2010, how the base was energized on the Republican side, right? Oh, it was a little bit of a outside of the Republican, but on the right side of things, and they got behind, their own issues. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of what we talked about in the past, where we did see this coming. We did see this wave of progressive or Democrats in general taking back seats, um, and so this is kind of what we talked about before. Yeah, so it's what I predict. I think it's predictable what just happened. So there's not
Yeah.
much to say.
Well, what do you guys think about this? Either, and I know Alex, you have to go, so maybe you can go first. Um, this could be something that simply had to happen. First of all, New Jersey, Chris Christie was a disaster of a governor, so I don't think this is really a
Isn't that
surprise.
bad? We'll debate that another time. I like Christie.
So Chris Christie, anyway, his would-be successor, got destroyed. And in Virginia, despite a campaign that was, obviously flawed in terms of message and very cutthroat, Northam won. So, like Carlos was alluding to, that after the election of a new president of a different party, the opposing base kind of takes that swing and they say, we have to build that momentum. Do you guys think that the Democrats can take this forward from tonight and build a momentum?
They're about to lose in Alabama, so that momentum is about to die. What they're saying is like, this is the Democrats right now. It's like even Nate Silver, they're like, oh, we're gonna take back the House. It's like we won two gubernatorial races in places that are already Democratic, and like they're freaking out over it. It's like that's nothing to freak out about. You won in two places where you should have won. And you say, like, even in New Jersey, Kim Quadango lost by 14 points. I believe that she was polling like 18 or 19 behind on average. Like, she got 42% of the vote there. She didn't do that bad. I mean, she lost, but she got overperformed, realistically speaking. And like, and Chris Christie's approval rating now is like in the low 20s or high teens right now. And she's his lieutenant governor and got 42% of the vote. So again, like, it really wasn't that bad of a race. And I don't think this means anything. I think this means Democrats won two seats. And
Yeah.
I think it means if they'll have make it a little easier in the Senate. They might flip Nevada, for example, but they're still probably going to lose seats in places like North Dakota and Indiana easily. I don't see them like making huge gains because this doesn't mean much.
Yeah.
Carlos, you're in a lot of forums. Do you think that they can build momentum off of this?
Is if they're going to build momentum, it's not going to be the Democratic Party, but it's going to be the people. I mean, a little. I mean, like Alex said, I don't think it's going to. Right now, it's early to tell, and you can't really make up anything about what happened today. It's a really low. I mean, it's just 2-3 seats that we're talking about here. But if anything, like I said before, if people are going to take over, it depending on how energized the progressive become, which right now I'm a little doubtful myself.
Yeah, you know what? I think to put like a little different flavor to what the news was today, and I think I don't know if either of you noticed this, but a lot of progressives are bragging about the fact that this transsexual was elected in Virginia to the Virginia House, and I think that they picked up a lot of seats in Virginia in the so there are certain pickups for actual progressives, like ones that are like more of the, how should I say this, ones that are like further away from the neoliberal establishment. So that there is evidence that there's an awakening within that sector. So I do think that the Trump administration or the congressional Republicans, they can't wait back and say, oh, well, we have all this rope to give. They really do have to deal with this uprising within their own party, the Republicans, and possibly with a progressive awakening.
Yeah.
You're right. I have to head out. It's actually starting to rain right now, and my laptop is dying. So I'm gonna say,
well,
Carlos, great to meet you.
Great to meet you,
Hope we
Alex.
do this again, and stay active.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Have a good night. All right.
Good night, Alex. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, Carlos. Let's do another, let's say, 10, 15 minutes.
Sure.
What do you think? What do you think about this Mayor De Blasio in New York? There was a testimony last week, I believe, from a former donor that he personally received guarantees of favors from De Blasio that he would, he would expedite some permits or whatever. Do you think that there is, within liberal enclaves in the country, there's this attitude that we'll vote for him, doesn't matter if he has a lot of this dirty laundry, just as long as they have a D after their name?
Oh yeah, that has been always the case. I think right now, like I said, I think right now you will see less and less of that, but I don't think it's gonna be the progressive, I guess, the overtaking per se. I don't know. I have my doubts of how big it will be, to a point where people that have voted like that for all their years, and I've known people even here that do that all the time. You know, they go there, oh, it's just Democrat, just check a box, right? I don't, between that, which has always been the case, and the new progressive wave, where people say, no, fuck this. Let me see let me look at the issues and see what is at stake, and what are, are we talking about Medicare for all? Are we talking about prison, the prison industrial complex reform? Are we talking about criminal reform? Are we talking about, these progressive issues? I don't know how big that wave is yet, and my sense is that it's going to be, I feel it like it's going to be about 30% of the wins if the Democrats start picking up seats. And with Blasio, I mean, same thing. I mean, I think right now, New York, it's pretty energized. I mean, remember what happened with the in the primaries? I mean, that was huge. And then now you see the city council meetings are a lot more interesting in New York. You also see a lot more involvement in the grassroots in New York. There's a lot of movement in New York right now, and I think that's going to affect the way people vote in the next elections, mainly in 2018. So right now, just looking around, just looking at how the movements, how the grassroots are moving, and how events are being put on and things like that. New York right now, it's a good battleground for progressives. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how much of that is seen in the polls, right? Once we actually see people voting. So that's kind of, that's where I am right now.
Yeah, I think that the one Achilles heel that I see sometimes with progressives, which it's sometimes hard to see who's right and who's wrong, is kind of the doctrinaire litmus tests, which there's the same thing on the right. For example, with gun control or abortion,
Right.
where for example, where I lived, there were two candidates for mayor, both of them Democrats. The fact is that one of them, they're both pro-police, but one of them got the endorsement of the police union because he was going to shut down some dirt bike tracks, or some dirt bikers, and get rid of this plan to build a dirt bike track over here that's mainly used by gang members. So, the hardcore BLM groups, they went and they said, well, this guy's basically backstabbing us. Now, these were both black candidates.
Yeah.
They were very, both of them in their own ways, very flawed guys. But people kind of voted reflexively, and that this is in the Midwest. Now, what do you think? And I don't know how much you've traveled in our part of the country, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and all that. What do you think that this is going to be a hard question? Speaker Pelosi can do. What do you think Speaker Pelosi can do to help her colleagues win back some of those seats here?
She has to listen to what Chuck Schumer has done. I mean, and I don't like Chuck Schumer either. Chuck Schumer is whatever. But I think she can start. Well, first of all, let's go back from zero. I think she should resign. I think she's a complete failure. Ever since she took over. I mean, how many seats has she lost since she's been at the helm? It's fucking ridiculous. It's just it's completely crazy. The fact that she's still in there. There was an interview done with, who was this guy? There was a guy from Vermont. He's pretty liberal. He was a super delegate, and he was interviewed, and he was asked how come Pelosi keeps getting reelected as a minority whip, minority leader of the House if we keep losing seats. And the first thing he said was, "Oh well, she raises money." It's like she raises money and she's a good leader, but the first thing she said is raises money. So anyways, coming back to Pelosi, I think my first instinct is she needs to go away and resign. But if she stays, the way she can do it is to follow in the steps of Chuck Schumer, where Chuck Schumer is starting to court the progressive a little, like say, oh yeah, sure, we'll talk to Bernie, we'll get Bernie in our rallies, and we'll do whatever, we follow Bernie. We won't say what he says, but we'll just tag along Bernie and just kind of, I guess let people associate with us with him, and just kind of tag along and then just tag along the policies that he's talking about. Yeah, sure, let him do his crazy talk, but we'll just tag along. So that's a good start. It's a lame start, but it's a good start for any establishment people, and start talking about actual policies. I mean, you one of the last things I saw her talk was about this plan. I don't know if you remember. It was like a better deal. You remember this?
Yeah, the better pizza for better ingredients or something.
Yeah,
Papa John's, which apparently now is white nationalist, but
oh my God,
I guess they couldn't have known that at the time. but yeah, go on. Sorry for the distraction.
Yeah, no, it's the better deal. Whoever saw that, now the fact that it's nowhere to be seen now, it's a sign that it's complete failure as an approach from the Democrats.
Well, it wasn't a real thing.
No, exactly. There was no real excitement, no real policy in it. It was more of the same. Kind of, $12 minimum wage, and a little bit here, a little bit of that. Let me clean the countertop a little.
I mean, guys like Sanders or Dennis Kucinich, they had a very developed platform. It wasn't something they put together in 5 minutes.
Well, exactly, and to that point, I think you bring an excellent point. A great way for Democrats to actually come back and actually do something for the party is to actually just follow the platform that was constructed during the primaries. The platform that Clinton was running on, even though she sucked at selling it, but there's good stuff in there. They already have a platform. They already have a set of policies that they can push for, but they just don't want to do it. They just want to, I don't know. They just want to do the same old, and it's not going to work.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'll get to that issue too. I think before we move on to some of the other ancillary stuff coming out of the Democrats. Yeah, I think it's not guaranteed, and I can't guarantee for sure that the Republicans would win. Which I don't consider myself a Republican, but I think it's more likely that they would win the congressional races. But I think with what you're talking about, there is more of a possibility for pickups and for limiting damage that the Republicans can do in 2018, where the Senate races, there's a lot more Democratic seats up for grabs than there are Republicans. I think you're absolutely right, because the Democrats, they're all about playing it safe with their donor class. It's creating a huge lack of confidence from the progressive base, which, next question here. Every day, did we talk about this in the last podcast? Every day there's more and more revelations from Brazil and from probably a few more people coming out about the goings-on from the 2016 campaign. I think personally that some of these explosive revelations will torpedo the Democrats going into 2018. What do you think about that? Do you think that there's going to be lasting damage from it?
It depends on how they take it, right? Right now, Dona Brazil is going to start doing interviews, so that's interesting to see how she responds to inquiries. She's going to be in Team Black, actually. I don't know if you know, but she's going to be interviewed by Team Black soon, and she's going to be going around doing interviews. Like I said last time, what the point, like the point we are right now is kind of like the baton is passed to Sanders, because he's kind of like victim in this case, right? And Democrats like to be victims, so that's kind of their culture. So now that the Sanders is the victim, is kind of like it's on his power to say, okay, well, if you want to make it up to me, you must do this, and this, which he already started. He sent out an email a couple of days ago to all the supporters and say, hey, this is what we're demanding for the DNC. No superdelegates, open primaries, and same-day registration, which I think it's very, it's a low bar. I mean, well, whatever, right? If it works, it works. But it depends on how good they respond to that. If they're not open to respond to it, which I don't think they will, if they're not able to respond to those inquiries, and if not able to do anything with the Unity Commission, I think they're going to just sink themselves, like you said. Yeah, but there's an opportunity for them. There's an opportunity for them if they decide to actually take reform and actually publicize the reforms and say, hey, we're actually open to new people. We're actually open to independence, or we have same-day registration, or we change these things. There's an opening for them. But again, looking at the history, very unlikely to happen.
So there's another question I wanted to ask that's possibly a little more personal for you. Brazil revealed that she had a phone call with Sanders where he revealed the deception. This was before the general election, and he took it apparently a little stoically, and I guess like he was accepting something he already knew about. Do you personally feel that he bears some responsibility for all the anguish that the progressives are going through, where they can't get recognition? They keep. I mean, there was the horrible relation, the horrible treatment at the convention, which I saw.
Oh yeah,
where they were basically being. It was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen, which people don't even talk about now.
Yeah, right.
It's like I can't believe it. I was watching it live and I was like, what the hell? This is like something out of. I've seen it happen in Taiwan where people are fighting in the seats. So do you think that Bernie does bear some guilt towards his supporters for not coming out and saying, what, this is bullshit. I'm not gonna pretend to support this.
So there is. So this is the thing that you probably know, but in case people don't know, when you talk about progressives, it's a big pool of people, right? You got a lot of people in there, but there's two camps that I think that are most important one. The ones that think that the party can be reformed and there's a future in the party, and the ones that they think that the party has failed them completely and they should completely get away. And in that case is people like Jimmy Dore, who I disagree with in that case, where he says like, fuck this shit, like let's go make a new party. So what's happening now is that the view. So a lot of people that after the convention that were fucked, a lot of people actually got mad at Bernie and they say like, fuck this guy, we're not gonna, we're gonna go to the Green Party or whatever, right? And for those people, yeah, sure, they're completely disappointed in him, and he, they probably don't care about him anymore. But one thing is true, is that what we saw today is important, and I think it makes a good point. where, well, look, you can have some progressive wins if you actually try. You can actually organize and get something done, because you're not going to do anything if you just cry like a baby and say like, oh no, I want, if it's not my way, it's not, there's no way if it's not my way. I think in my perspective, you got to be an adult and say, what's the most realistic path forward? Are we going to create a new party? That's bullshit. How much that takes? It's unbelievable. I mean, I would love to, but I don't know. I don't believe it right now. But going back to Bernie and what happened, with his call and everything. One thing that I've realized with Bernie is that he's a guy that he's been around for a long time, and I think he understands that there's certain things he cannot have. Like, even with his crazy talk, like, because I think sometimes it's crazy, and his ideas of like very crazy reforms in the policy perspective. I think as a politician, he is a good politician, in the sense, not in a sense of like a good lefty, but just in general, in a sense that he can pick politically the good battles. For example, this he could have said, he got the call from Donna. He could have gone out and say, Donna told me this and this, I was right. Let's run for as an independent. But what he's always shown, and over and over again, he's kind of like a long shot guy, where he, in his mind is more of a, what's going to be my legacy on the long shot if I take this road. And I think what's going to happen is, like, in 20 years from now, people are going to look back and say, hey, this guy actually put his hands in the mud and kind of like got working with the establishment, which is not, they're not up to for change, and actually, completely change or somewhat change the party for the good. And I think he's playing a long game that some people don't understand, and some people might see that as a trade, being a traitor to the base, and going for Hillary when he could have, when he was cheated. I think he plays a long game that some people don't understand, and I don't think it necessarily alienates his base. It's just that's his political game, and I think that's a very effective game in the long run.
Yeah, I think in that sense, you and Alex kind of have a bit of the same philosophy, and I tend to be I would probably be of the same philosophy as Jimmy Dore on the conservative side, because I think the Republican Party is so thoroughly, beholden to these corporate interests and to the military-industrial complex,
Yeah.
which is a huge problem when you're talking about keeping people accountable. And that's why I supported Ron Paul and his, now his son Rand Paul, and therefore for me, if when this type of stuff happens and you see this level of blatant dishonesty, and by the way, it's a charity fraud what they did with the DNC and the grassroots donors. It shouldn't, when people commit all this money to a cause, and in the end it's revealed that there was no. It's basically a fundraising scam. There was nothing to be had for a lot of those, and these are people that, by the way, I have almost zero common ground with them, but I can recognize, these guys, they have the right to have their money back. Right. Some of them were actually donating a fair amount of their living income for this stuff. So it's nothing to laugh at for these people. Right. I mean, let's be honest, some people do laugh at them, but the issue here, in my mind, is that I do think personally that we do need more political parties, including a progressive party, and including a party for people that are more committed to free market capitalism, like me. I look at a lot of times at the evangelical wing of the GOP, and there are some good ones that I think they're committed to some of the principles that I do, but some of them, look at that Governor Christie, for example. His drug policy it's something that's out of 7th grade health class or something. It's just not. It's not intelligent. It's not intelligent. Even if you wanted to make the case that all these people that are smoking marijuana should be prosecuted, you kind of have to back it up with a real philosophy, and he doesn't. And that's why if I was in the same position as you, and I actually was in 2012 with Mitt Romney, who I thought was an absolute disgrace, I went out, I left the voting booth, and I was like, I shouldn't have even come. I don't think that voting is for me. And that was a philosophy I had until, I saw that Hillary Clinton was going to run again, and I said, well, I got to vote against her. So I was motivated by kind of a negative, kind of a spiteful motivation to vote. What do you think about that going forward? And I guess this will be the last question because I have to go do some stuff. But do you think, there's been a lot of talk about this, do you think the Democratic Party can succeed on an anti-Trump plank in 2018 that's really focused on beating Donald Trump? Or do you think that if they do that, they really will be headed toward disaster, as some people have predicted?
They already failed with that strategy. So if they do it again, I mean, they're going to fail again.
But
that was their whole strategy.
They can technically point to tonight as a success with New Jersey and Virginia. They can say, well, and I have their emails to prove it. All their emails are about, we're going to defeat Trump in Virginia, blah, blah. It's, in my opinion, it's not a fair representation of what happened because neither of these candidates were real Trump animals on the Republican side. So, but they can at least make that case. What would you say to those people that they think, we can continue to have this sort of Jimmy Kimmel style Democratic Party with the people at the top? What would you say is the proof that that's not going to succeed anymore?
It's hard because we need more data, right? Right now we had a couple, like you said, we had a couple of them that were against Trump. I would say, it should have been enough with the general election and the thousands of legislators that lost after that crazy campaign. But I feel like with Democrats, it's just they don't get fazed by that, and I think if they continue doing that, I believe they're going to lose heavily on 2018, and I think that's going to be a turning point for them. If that's not a turning point, they're not going to be able to be reformed, and I'll be joining the camp with fuck this shit. Let's create a new party. So,
yeah, those guys, they make.
View.
I think there's parallel processes in both parties. The people that are saying fuck this shit, they've actually been literally cheated out of a lot of money, and I think that I personally think that they're right, and I know that you seem to have a better amount of patience and strategic thinking. So I don't think you're as deluded as people on the Republican side that are committed to, Paul, what's that guy's name? Paul Ryan.
Oh yeah.
Speaker of the House. that they're thinking, and I know people that they say, well, we need somebody who's who has the tenor of office, who's able to present a respectable face, and I say to them, they will say the same things about Paul Ryan that they say about Steve Bannon. It doesn't matter. It does not matter.
Yeah. Because
it's a cutthroat world, and they just don't listen to me. And by the way, a lot of people like me who about a year and a half ago, I was not really willing to listen to Donald Trump. Steve Bannon, I wasn't so familiar with. A lot of us are thinking, Steve Bannon, he's proven a lot of these critics wrong. I personally think he's redeemed himself in terms of a lot of the smears that are against him. A lot of us are looking at him as the hope for actually bringing some accountability to this party. And we can only hope that there'd be somebody on your side to do that, because you can't have two parties that are basically beholden to corporate interests that are running the country.
What you need on the right, as as you need on the left, is that you need, if you want to start a new movement, you need a charismatic leader. And that's why the Draft for Bernie movement was about, right? That they realized that Bernie is a charismatic leader, and if anything, if they ever plan to build a movement, they need that charismatic leader on the top, and that's what they need. So on the left side, on the right side, that's something that the right side needs if they want to create a libertarian, quasi-libertarian movement. And the thing about Rand Paul is that I don't think he's the guy. I don't think he's a good kind of like attractive person as a politician. It's not. I'm not talking about his policies at all, but I'm talking about his kind of like his the way he portrays himself, the way he talks. I've seen a lot of his Senate hearings and stuff. I mean, he says good stuff. I mean, if you read what he says, it's like, wow. But if you hear what he says and you look what he says, it's like, oh man, okay, all right, it's okay. I don't get too excited. So yes, of course, we need people like and I'll tell you this. I think even Bannon, because I've seen it again. I don't agree with him at all, but I see the way he speaks, and the way he kind of moves himself in the crowd. He is more of a charismatic leader than Rand Paul. And that's kind of like, oh, okay, maybe he's the guy, maybe not. But yeah, you're right. We need that kind of people that keep the parties accountable. Otherwise, we have this crazy oligarchy, and we go to war forever. Right?
Yeah, I think that you make a point that I've been hearing a lot, and I agree with, because I still would say, Rand Paul, Mr. Slab of Ribs now with his injury.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, too bad for him. Get well soon, sir.
Yeah.
But he and there's all this violence going on. He's kind of Mr. There's people that are hot and there's people that are cold. Bernie Sanders is about being hot. He gets really hot. Rand Paul doesn't get too hot. Some people do say that. I don't really see it. He goes up there. He's kind of like making a case, pointing at all these ideas, and it's almost like you're listening to kind of a philosopher speak, and you get that sense, and it's like cool, but maybe it's just not going to be you who does this.
Like,
so
Ramon, the funny thing, I was actually for Ron Paul when he was running, and I'm not a big Republican guy, but I was willing to vote for Ron Paul, because Ron Paul, I mean, he had the fire, man. I mean, he was riling up the crowds. I mean, that guy, he was old as fuck, but he was riling up the crowds for sure.
Yeah, Ron Paul, I have to say, there's on foreign policy, there's certain areas where I think he's very much he's just a purist in a way that I can't understand, but he's the person who really formed my vision of what economics should be about. And I think that due to the screw ups of the past administrations, going back to, let's say, the first Bush, there's more and more people that need a Bernie Sanders or Ron Paul or something like that. How about we break here? Sure. Everybody, it's Carlos Cordova. Carlos, you don't have a website or anything, right? You're just
no.
It's just Carlos.
Just a guy.
You heard it here. It's exclusive American Gladio with Carlos. Alex does have a podcast, but I didn't get the name from it, so I'll try to share it in the description. So everybody have a good night. I'll talk to you later, Carlos. And looking forward to 2018.
All right.